Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari. Jai Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tiravanachari. Yamuna Tiravanachari. Anjaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivajikacharya Ashtotar to the Sri Srimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivajikacharya Ashtotar to the Sri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Kantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktavinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Narayanam Namaskritya Narang Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiriye. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, we should offer our respectful obeisances unto Lord Narayan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, unto Narayan Rishi, the supremest human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author, and unto Srila Prabhupada, the translator, commentator, and our spiritual master. Nashta Prayesha Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatyuttama Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Naishtiki. By regular attendance in classes on Srimad Bhagavatam and by rendering service to the pure devotee, all that is inauspicious within the heart is destroyed almost to nil, and loving devotion to the Supreme Lord, who is glorified in transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay. On the 17th day of October, 2025 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we'll be reading 9th canto, King Sudyumna, ninth canto, Liberation. Chapter 1, King Sudyumna becomes a woman. Texts 18 to 33. And we'll chant 33 together. So there'll be a few verses before that. All right, I'll just read the English of these verses and whatever purports there are. You are all self-controlled, well-balanced in mind, and aware of the absolute truth. And because of austerities and penances, you are completely cleansed of all material contamination. Your words, like those of the demigods, are never baffled. Then how is it possible that your determination has failed? So just to put us in context here, I think this is Shrada Dev complaining to all the gathered devotees who performed the sacrifice for the birth of his son, but it turned out to be a woman, a girl. So he's wondering what happened. Purport. We have learned from many Vedic literatures that a benediction or curse given by the demigods never proves false. By performing austerities and penances, by controlling the senses and mind, and by achieving full knowledge of the absolute truth, one is fully cleansed of material contamination. Then one's words and blessings, like those of the demigods, are never a failure. So the next verse is text number 19. The most powerful great-grandfather Vasishta, after hearing these words of Manu, understood the discrepancy on the part of the priest. Thus he spoke as follows to the son of the sun god. The discrepancy in the objective is due to your priest's deviation from the original purpose. However, by my own prowess, I shall give you a good son. Shukadeva Goswami said, O King Parikshit, after the most famous and powerful Vasishta made this decision, he offered prayers to the Supreme Person, Vishnu, to transform Ila into a male. So Ila is a little baby girl. Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Supreme Controller, being pleased with Vasishta, gave him the benediction he desired. Thus Ila was transformed into a very fine male named Sudyumna. But you'll see the problem. He must have something in his karma to get transformed into a girl. O King Parikshit, that hero Sudyumna, accompanied by a few ministers, so this is later after he'd grown up obviously, by a few ministers and associates, and riding on a horse brought from Sindhu Pradesh, once went into the forest to hunt. He wore armor and was decorated with bows and arrows, and he was very beautiful. While following the animals and killing them, he reached the northern part of the forest. There in the north, at the bottom of Mount Meru, is a forest known as Sukumara, where Lord Shiva always enjoys with Uma. Sudyumna entered that forest. Enjoys is like a word that Prabhupada used to mean have sex. O King Parikshit, as soon as Sudyumna, who was expert in subduing enemies, entered the forest, he saw himself transformed into a female, and his horse transformed into a mare. When his followers also saw their identities transformed and their sex reversed, they were all very morose and just looked at one another. Can you imagine? Maharaj Parikshit said, O most powerful Brahman, he's speaking to Shukadeva, of course, why was this place so empowered, and who made it so powerful? Kindly answer this question, for I am very eager to hear about this. Shukadeva Goswami answered, great saintly persons who strictly observed the spiritual rules and regulations, and whose own effulgence dissipated all the darkness of all directions, once came to see Lord Shiva in that forest. When the goddess Ambika, that's Durga, saw the great saintly persons, she was very much ashamed, because at that time she was naked. She immediately got up from the lap of her husband and tried to cover her breast. Seeing Lord Shiva and Parvati engaged in sexual affairs, all the great saintly persons immediately desisted from going further and departed for the ashram of Naranarayan. Text 32. Thereupon, just to please his wife, Lord Shiva said, any male entering this place shall immediately become a female. And now we'll read text 33. Tata urdvam vanam tadvai purusha varjayanti hi sa chanuchara sangyukta vichachara vanad vanam tata urdvam vanam tadvai purusha varjayanti sa chanuchara samyukta vichachara vanad vanam tata urdvam vanam tadvai purusha varjayanti sa chanuchara samyukta vichachara vanad vanam tata urdvam vanam tadvai purusha varjayanti sa chanuchara samyukta vichachara vanad vanam tata urdvam vanam tadvai purusha varjayanti sa chanuchara samyukta vichachara vanad vanam tata urdvam vanam tadvai purusha varjayanti sa chanuchara samyukta vichachara vanad vanam tata urdvam vanam tadvai purusha varjayanti sa chanuchara samyukta vichachara vanad vanam. Go ahead. Tata urdvam vanam tadvai purusha varjayanti sa chanuchara samyukta vichachara vichachara vanad vanam. Ladies. Tata urdvam vanam tadvai purusha varjayanti sa chanuchara samyukta vichachara vanad vanam. Tata urdvam vanam tadvai purusha varjayanti sa chanuchara samyukta vichachara vanad vanam. Anyone online want to chant?
Tata urdvam vanam tadvai
Tata urdvam vanam tadvai
purusha varjayanti
purusha varjayanti
sa chanuchara samyukta vichachara vanad vanam.
vichachara vanad vanam. Thank you, Jalatala. Tata urdvam. From that time onward, vanam, forest, tat, that, vai, in particular, purushaha, males, varjayanti, do not enter, he, indeed, sa, Sudyumna, in the form of a woman, cha, also, anuchara sangyukta, accompanied by his companions, vichachara, walked, vanatvanam, within the forest from one place to another. Translation. Since that time, no male had entered that forest. But now, King Sudyumna, having been transformed into a female, began to walk with his associates from one forest to another. Purport. In the Bhagavad Gita 2.22, it is said, Vasangsi jirnani yata vihaya nabani gunnati nado parani tatasharedani vihaya jirnyan yangyani sangyati nabani dehi. As a person puts on new garments, giving up old ones, the soul similarly accepts new material bodies, giving up the old and useless ones. The body is just, close quote, the body is just like a dress. And here this is proved. Sudyumna and his associates were all male, which means that their souls were covered by male dress. But now they became female, which means that their dress was changed. The soul, however, remains the same. It is said that by modern medical treatment, a male can be transformed into a female and a female into a male. The body, however, has no connection with the soul. The body can be changed either in this life or the next. Therefore, one who has knowledge of the soul and how the soul transmigrates from one body to another does not pay attention to the body, which is nothing but a covering dress. Pandita samadarshanaha, Bhagavad Gita 5.18. Such a person sees the soul, which is part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. Therefore, he is samadarshi, a learned person. Om jnana timirandasya jnanandana shalakaya chakshurun militam mena tasmai shri gurave namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer humble obeisances unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So, this transgender business goes back a long way. Although it seems it was it was not involuntary. So Prabhupada makes the point here, quoting this verse, which is a very nice verse in the Bhagavad Gita for understanding the difference between the soul and the body. That the body is simply a dress of the soul, a covering of the soul. Vasangsi jirnana yata vihaya. And just as eventually this will wear out and I'll discard it and maybe get a new one. Similarly, the whole bodily dress eventually wears out. And the soul leaves it. It can't stand to stay there anymore because the body is dysfunctioning. So it leaves and the body falls and it's a dead body. But the soul gets a new body, assuming that he's not perfectly God-realized, going back to Godhead. And then as the soul grows in that body, person in the womb and outside the womb, he identifies completely with that body as the self. This is the conditioned state. And now the first part of what we read, all that stuff, was this Sudyumna had something in his karma that he was transferred to a girl. First he was transferred to a girl, right? But then the sage was able to, Vasishtha, I think, able to transfer him back into a boy. Nice boy. Sudyumna grew up as a boy, but now again he's turned into a female by entering into that forest. So that's somehow in his karma. But male or female, we're all pure spirit souls, and we have our original spiritual body. This is the definition of mukti given in the Srimad Bhagavatam, 2nd canto. What is it? Muktir hitvanyata rupam swarupena vyavasthitihi. This is a very important half verse. Now this is part of the table of contents kind of in the 2nd canto, which gives all of the subject matters of the Bhagavatam, and then it defines each one. So here's the definition of mukti. It's not simply that you leave the body and merge into Brahman, which is the impersonalist view, you see. Because that mukti is really is something that devotees ultimately don't hanker after, because it becomes naturally. The very first line of the Shikshastika, Cheto Darpanamarjanam Baba Mahadavagni Nirvapanam, more or less says that by the fully taking part in the process of Sankirtan, congregational chanting of the holy name, the first benefit is that the heart is purified. The mirror of the mind is polished, is the metaphor. And that gives you liberation. Bhava Mahadavagni Nirvapanam. Bhava Mahadavagni is a poetic way of saying the blazing forest fire of material life. That's what the transmigration of the soul is. That's what birth, old age, disease, and death. Because it's just one suffering state after another. And the whole process is very painful. And so I'll never forget this verse. It was taught to me by Mahavishnu Maharaj the Elder. I don't know if there's anyone here who remembers him from the old days. Balaram, you remember Mahavishnu? You never met him? Okay, he left before you got here. Anyway, he's a very nice. He came here and he wasn't a sannyasi. He was an elder brahmachari, and he had rented a place nearby here, and he was an integral part of the temple. And then I used to get to go to India every other year in my BBT work, and we used to be able to, in the early aughts, we were able to, during Kartik, we were able to go to Vrindavan. Jayawada Swami, he arranged it that way. And so I remember distinctly, I was online waiting for prasadam, and Maharaj was there either in front of me or behind me. And I said, as I often did then and sometimes do now, that would you like to hear a nice shloka? And he said, yes. And he pulls out a pad to take notes. No one ever did that before or since. So that was, I forget the verse I gave him, probably something from the Karnamrita I was working on that at the time. And then he gave me a verse also, which I later was able to write down. He said it was from Padma Puran. And that verse is exactly pertinent to this idea of being aware that you're not the body and not identifying with it, and that is the first step. So he says, Deheshti mangsuduridevi matam chijasva. Jaya sutadisha sadama matam vimuncha. Pushyanisham jagadidham chanapangadishtam. Rairagya raga rasikobhava bhakti nishtam. And of course I put it into a poem by now. Don't love the body, just a bag of flesh and blood and bone. Give up your sense of ownership for wife and kids and home. At every moment see that your world totters on destruction, or every moment see that this world totters on destruction. Become detached and learn to love the Lord without obstruction. And I always point out when I recite that poem that it doesn't really do justice to the last line, because there's a very nice phrase there, which that can stick in your mind. Vairagya raga. Vairagya raga. Become attached to detachment. Aspire for detachment. And Rasiko Bhava Bhakti Nishtam. And the only way to do it is by becoming able to taste the pleasure of Krishna consciousness. That's why the chanting of Hare Krishna, absorbing yourself in Harinam Sankirtan, you become attached to the holy name, which is Krishna. And it opens up the whole attachment to Krishna in all the varieties of ways, Srimad Bhagavatam and all these different things. And that is your vairagya. We're not into just becoming detached, which is impossible. You have to become attached. You have to be attached to something. Right now, life after life, birth after birth, we're attached to varieties of material energy. But that attachment is meant for Krishna. And the whole process of bhakti yoga is meant for, and I love this word, sublimating our attachments. It's used in psychology, but it's basically the same meaning. Purifying. We're attached, okay, become attached to Krishna. We're attached to eating nice food, become attached to prasadam. Like music, hear the nice bhajans, But basically, Krishna is in the center. He's the subject matter of all of it. So, this, verse, as many, Deheshti mangsuduridevi, understand, this is it seems an expansion or inspired by that famous verse Prabhupada would quote all the time. Yasyatma buddhi kunapeti dataki swadi kalatradesha bhoma ijyadi yat tirtha buddhi salile nakarachit janeshu bigyesha saeva gokara. Gokara. Now goka has different meanings. It can mean a cow or an ass, a jackass, a donkey. Or it can mean the donkey who carries the food for the cow, which I prefer because we like cows, And this is spoken by Krishna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, not during the Bhagavad Gita time, but when they all visited. You remember, everyone went there for the solar eclipse because it was very auspicious. So he went there, met the gopis and the other residents of Vrindavan. So what happened was that I think it was Vasudeva who was doing all these sacrifices, and all these great souls and realized souls came in from outer space. You know, they all appeared, this sage, and this Muni and that Muni. And he asked them, please instruct me in how I can achieve life's perfection. I said, what, are you nuts? You have the Supreme Lord as the Supreme Person. They didn't say that, but they thought it. He's a little bewildered. Krishna has his son, and he wants to get more perfect. You know, that's way beyond us. So anyway, they're there, and Krishna, he takes the role of an attached householder. After all, he's got 16,108 queens and palaces, you know. So he cites this verse, you know, Yas yatma buddhi kunape tvidatake. He's describing those who are no better than cows or donkeys, or than donkeys who carry the cow's fodder. First thing is, Yas yatma buddhi, thinking that you are this body. Yas yatma buddhi kunape tvidatake. Kunape means a corpse, or in this case, just a bag, you know, of three dhatus: mucus, bile, and air. This is from the Ayurveda. This is how they practice the balance has to be there for good health. Mucus, bile, and air. So that's more or less the contents of this bag, you know, and you're identifying with it. That's what you are. No one thinks, yes, I'm a very beautiful bag of mucus. No one thinks like that. They forget the innards and everything, and they identify with it and might try to make it look beautiful. You know? But Krishna is telling it like it is. And then he goes on, Swadi kalatva boma ijidi. Yasyatma buddhi kunabeji dataki. Swadi, swa means your own. Di, thinking your own. The bom, Swadi kalatradisha boma ij. Kalatra is the wife. And adishu means the expansion from the wife. And the children, the job, the bank account, all of these things. And then that's the second description. Then boma ijidi. Now boma ijidi can mean different things, but one thing, Prabhupada always took it to mean like nationalism. Identify himself, yes, I am a resident of India. You know I imagine America, you know. Boma, that's the boma. Ija is worshipable. The land is worshipable. You know, it's like patriotism and nationalism. It's complete ignorance. This thing D means having the consciousness. And then yat tirtha buddhi salile nakarditat. And then those who go on pilgrimage, you know, by the millions, they go on pilgrimage in India, you know. Yat tirtha buddhi, they think that the tirtha is the whole, you know, just going to the tirtha, that's the whole business of the pilgrimage. Salile, and to take bath there, and then come home. And Buddha said, Janeshu Vigyeshu Seva Gokara. But not to inquire from the learned sages there. You go to Vrindavan and just take bath in the Yamuna, because now they say, don't take bath in the Yamuna. It's polluted, right? Last time I wasn't going to take bath. I was just doing what you do. You bow down on the bank and you put a few drops on your head, you know. So, they tell me, you know, because it's become nasty up in Delhi, they just throw the garbage in there. So that's unfortunate. But anyway, to think that, you know, just going there and taking a bath in the holy river, whatever it may be, and then coming back, without trying to inquire from the great saints and so, you know, who lived there, and, you know, to be really purified. So this is a verse by Krishna, and it all boils down to the bodily concept of life. Now, it seems like there's an emphasis here, right? Because the whole thing is that Sudyumna is going back and forth. First of all, he was supposed to be a boy, but he came out a girl because his mother, if you read it earlier, she requested a girl from the sage, and said, "Okay, we can give you a girl." So he gives the girl, but then Vasishta is not very happy with that. So he says, "Don't worry." Vasishta was the one who was able to make him back into a boy. I'm sorry. By Vasita. He was the father. Yeah. So back and forth, you know, because the Sudyumna, he's a girl, but then he wanders into this forest, and Shiva and Parvati are in the midst of their pastimes, and Parvati is very upset. So Shiva says, "Okay, from now on, anyone who enters this forest, any man is going to become a woman," you know. Sudyumna and his friends go up there. They had no idea. And what is this? You know. So there's a little humorous. But anyway, the whole idea is that whatever we are, if we're human beings, this is the whole thing with Lord Chaitanya's movement. Prabhupada, when he came to America, he had to depart from the usual thing in India, which is there's no such thing as brahmacharini. You know, the women, their proper duty is to become married, have children, take care of the husband, like that. You know, and if the husband is a nice devotee, then they can advance like that. But Prabhupada said that's not going to work in America. You have the boys coming with their girlfriends; they're not married. You know. And so he started. He wanted to get married if they came that way, but some came alone. You know, one of the first devotees was Jadharani. She was going to school. She's like 18 years old, but she was already a very nice artist. You know, Prabhupada loved the artist. He knew that was going to be an important part of the whole. So she would come. You know, it's 26 Second Avenue. Come all the way down on the train from, I know where it's in the northern part of the Manhattan Island where the school was going to. So she was cutting school and coming, you know, and she became the first lady. She wasn't living, there was no ashram, ladies' ashram at that time, but she would dutifully come early, you know, and very faithfully. And then others in our own Kanchan Bala, she was right after her. She was also there in 26 Second Avenue. We're very fortunate to have her in the community here. Also an artist. She's also, if you go to the home, and if I went to their home when her husband was passing, and she's got art all on the walls. She's painted Krishna art and Prabhupada and all kinds of things. Very wonderful, actually. So, and in this movement, I mean, I always point out, sometimes people criticize, but it's a fact that 6 or 7 of the temples, of the main temples in America, are led by ladies. Mukhya. I'll tell you one thing. I used to go to Alatra, and she's the president of Alatra. And for years, they had these incredible Krishna Balaram deities, but they didn't actually install them. They would be in a closet or something, you know. Many years. Why? Because the building that they had it was this temple building that another lady, a very prominent lady who was here in the early 90s, Pranada, Nagaraj's wife, and she had raised the money to build that temple, and but there was limited space because there was limited money, you know. So the temple is modest; it's maybe 2/3 the size of this one, and there was a kitchen area for the deities. But there wasn't enough room to have enough clothes for Krishna and Balaram and Radha Shyamasundar and Gaurnitai. So for years they had just Jagannath deities and had much more simple dressing. But when they install those deities, to install the deities, they had to have the room. So she oversaw the building of the whole other building behind it that was just a kitchen. Big, many burners and kitchen, so that they have big feasts, they all cook everything there. And that opened up the room to put the paraphernalia for Krishna Balaram they were able to install. This is like 12 years ago or so. Exquisite deities. Just to let you know, when I came here, we didn't have these big Gaurnitai deities. But I think Balaram, they were here when you got here. Yeah. And so we had a smaller set, you know, the brass set, which Balakor, which is incredible. And but she has this special skill in overseeing the carving of deities where they come out extra, you know, wonderful. And she oversaw the carving of, they were here for a year or so working with Jayawada Swami on the Back to Godhead and getting it going. And then they went back to India and they've been there ever since, I think. But she had spent time before that going to the deities in the French farm are also incredible, and she saw them. So these deities and these Krishna Balaram deities, I have some wonderful pictures I can show you maybe during breakfast time. I'll take it around of these Krishna Balaram deities. So they were made possible to be installed and relished, you know, and worshipped by Mukhya Devi. My whole point is that she is a wonderful leader. And then there's Vrindavaneshwari in, I think her name is Vrindavaneshwari, in Washington, Potomac. And her father is a general, you know, so she's got the chops to, run things. I've spent a little time there. And of course, Sandamani, who when I came here, she was here. And then she got married and she went to Tucson. And she's been running it ever since. That wonderful restaurant supports the temple and it's expanding. So anyway, there's others which I won't mention, but Prabhupada, of course, the ladies, to raise the children and have, that's a great service to Krishna, to raise devotee children. But he also recognizes Yamuna's skill. She was in charge when the Krishna Balaram temple opened in 75 of setting the deity standards. That's how much of faith he had. I don't know, she didn't spend all that much time there after the opening, but she set them up and everything like that. So there's ladies in ISKCON, because after all, it's just a dress, right? So you have the skill, that's very important. Vishaka is the president of the Manor Temple, the Bhaktivedanta Manor, where she did all this photography and she worked with Yadavar producing the films. So anyway, but here in this culture, they were so happy because the ladies are pretty much, to get married, have children, take care of the children. That's a very important function.
Who wasn't happy?
Sudyumna and his father. The father wasn't happy that it became Ela. And his Ela became a girl. It was born, even though the sacrifice was there to have a son. So anyway, that's part of the lesson here. But it's interesting that it's not just his little baby, he became a boy again. But then when he becomes an adult again, that's this happen. So that's part of it. But the lesson here, Prabhupada given is that you're not the body's just a dress, we have to give it up. Don't identify with the body. Use your facilities that we have. We all have ears and tongue and voice and all these different in the brain. And man or woman, young or old, try to engage as much as possible in Krishna consciousness and use the facilities that you have to perform services for Krishna. That's what real yukta vairagya is, right? Anasakta sivashayan yataham apayunjata nirbandha Krishna sambandha yuktam vairagya mukchate. It's a very important verse. I think it's in the Bhakti Rasamrita. Yes. Anasakta, not being attached to the objects of the senses for your own gratification, but using them where appropriate in the service of the Lord. And in this way, you develop detachment from the objects of the senses as sense gratification, but you become attached to them as ways of paraphernalia for serving Krishna. Just like this temple. If you actually look at it, I remember I was chanting japa and I was thinking like this, it was very blissful. That all of this, of course, it's mostly, Krishna's external energy, all the things that we see here and everything. But they're blessed, And if you just visualize, okay, this is still part of the material energy, but it's been turned into a worship paraphernalia. But just imagine you're in the spiritual world. Everything is alive. They have cushions there, they have all these ornaments and things, and they're all conscious, and they're being ecstatic to be used in Krishna service. This is the spiritual world, where everything is very blissful because it's being used in Krishna service. So that's the kind of atmosphere we want to set here. That's why probably, what do we sing every morning? What is it? The third verse of the Gurvashtaka. Shivigrahara. Shivigrahara, I know it when I sing it, but sorry, it's getting senile. Shivigrahara dana nityanana shringara tanmandira marjanado yuktasya bhaktam chanayunjatopi vande guru Sri Charanaravinda. So he's always engaged, right? Now, Prabhupada, when he just had the 26th Avenue, there was an altar there, and he was keeping it. He was also offering, no one knew how to do anything. But then he taught us how to cook. That's a very important aspect, the deity worship, So the idea is that the spiritual master is showing us how to engage everything in Krishna service. And that includes the building materials to make temples and, of course, Lakshmi and everything like that. And it all becomes sacred, you know? The money that's collected in order to buy, eventually, hopefully, some week, month, this van, that money is worship. In other words, that's paraphernalia for worshiping Krishna. It's blessed that those who give the money are blessed by that. And the van itself become transcendental, you know, provided we take care of it nicely and use it for Krishna's service. So that's the same thing with this vessel, that it becomes spiritualized when every moment, you know, the more that we're using it, the mind, the intelligence, the senses, to connect to Krishna. It's like plugging in. You're plugging into the infinite powerhouse of Krishna consciousness, and you become, in this famous word of Prabhupada used, Krishnized. The editors, not me, turned it into Krishnaized, but I think Krishnized works. Everyone knows what it means. Okay, I'm going to end there. Any comments on these points? Okay, Mukunda, you're first. Here we have it, Mike. Mukunda Charan Prabhu.
Just to make sure I didn't misunderstand, could you repeat in short what philosophical or cultural lessons we should take from the point that, or at least the list of 7 or so ladies who are managers in ISKCON, or are leaders, managers in ISKCON?
What lesson we should take from the fact that they've come to that point?
Or yeah, what was the relevant points you wanted to make with those examples?
Well, just that in ISKCON at least, because this is you know, the thrust of this whole passage is that it's distinctly inferior to be born a woman, to have a woman's body, you know. But the fact is that in Prabhupada's ISKCON, factually, although we find in the books, you know, that men have, of course, you know, you read the Bhagavatam, and I mean, Parikshit is a man, Shukadeva is a man. You know, the people who are basically moving the story forward are men, and then ladies come, and some of them are very exalted. Of course, the gopis are the most exalted, so that's there. But the point is, Prabhupada saw the situation, and he applied Lord Chaitanya's dictum, you know, that anyone can chant Hare Krishna, they can become purified and go back to Godhead. And so the role that the ladies play, you know, in married life, that's ideal. And I remember in LA when I went there, that had been the real thrust, you know. But then what happened? And there were already children. Some of you have seen picture Prabhupada giving the little babies, you know, the little kids, the cookies and everything. He loved the kids. So that's a completely orthodox way to be a Vaishnavi, you know, to be a dutiful housewife raising the children, and you know, the cooking is very important, and so that's, you know, that's there. But Prabhupada saw that in America at least, ladies had some of them were alone, like Yamuna at first, you know, but she was a very good singer and incredible cook, and very intelligent, and so he engaged her in all kinds of ways. The first main pujari was a lady. I forget her name now, but she then went around and taught different temples, you know, the basics of deity worship. So all I'm saying is that it shouldn't be, you know, that just our own little example here. We're all having Guru Puja. Ramapati's left. Balaram's on the altar. You know, there are a few drummers, and Dvija's traveling. What to do? You knew that Eleni knew how to play the drum.
Ebony.
Huh? Ebony? I'm sorry. Ebony. So, and you did very nicely. You know, she kept it, and the proof was Maharaj was very appreciative. So why not? You know, why not?
Can you give any examples? Because this example specifically, it seemed, and correct me if I'm wrong in this summary or paraphrase, but that because you're not the body, then therefore the example that Srila Prabhupada showed is, or that we can see in ISKCON, is that we have you know, these prominent women temple presidents and so on. And can you give any examples of Srila Prabhupada making any of his female disciples GBC members or temple presidents, with the exception of, there is Govinda Dasi, whose husband was temple president, and then he left.
Yeah.
And so Srila Prabhupada asked her just to fill in for him. I'm not sure how long she filled in for him, but can you think of other examples where Srila Prabhupada, in seeing that his female disciples were not the body, thought it was a good idea to put them in those positions?
Yeah, that he didn't do that, put them in management positions.
Or are there any examples, or what's the strongest examples that he did, if you can think of any? Or are there any, I guess?
Well, like I say, you know, especially the Archan, you know, that I wish I could remember her name. The first lady who became expert, and then Prabhupada sent her, who is it? Shilavati. She had a lot of responsibility. She came to Brooklyn when I was there to show, but I think she started in L.A.
And she became like a head pujari or something, or like a temple president, you're saying?
Not a temple president, but she was a head pujari for sure in L.A. But she was so good that Prabhupada, just like, you know, the devotees would be in L.A. and they were nice to him and said, now go to this remote area and start a temple. And so she was given the responsibility of going around and teaching Archan. And that I was there in Brooklyn in the early 70s, and she came there. You know, that's. So she was the first one who Prabhupada trained personally, and she took it so well and did so well that he gave her that responsibility. But you're right, the management is generally not given. And that's because, you know, for guys to be under the girls, it's rare. Like I used to go there every year and do a seminar with Ramapad Maharaj around Christmas time. I did it for about 5 or 6 years. And there was a temple president, I think his name was Nityananda. He was an Indian gentleman. And he was married, and he had a wife, Hemangi, and a daughter, I think, growing up. So at one point, he had to make some money to send his daughter to college. So believe it or not, he came here and stayed with me, because you may not know this, probably don't, but this is the center in the United States where the UPS people train up how you can run a UPS store. So he came here, and also the temple president we had from South Africa, he also learned here. So anyway, so then he wasn't the president anymore, and she became the president, Hemangi. But the brahmacharis, they had a little crew of brahmacharis, and they kind of dissolved. They went off. Because it's difficult to have brahmacharis, you know, with the temple president who's a lady, you know, because they require strong leadership. Like when we had Mahatattva here, suddenly, you know, we had a lot of brahmacharis, including Bhakti Bronson, who became Balaram. And we even had brahmachari retreats. We had, his guru coming and giving the retreats. So that works. But to have brahmacharis, they can't be really trained by a woman, you know, as a president. So that's a detraction.
Some of your godbrothers and godsisters, they appreciate, or they emphasize, that Srila Prabhupada was sensitive to the strengths and weaknesses of men and the strengths and weaknesses in women, and that was reflected in the kinds of services he put them in. And one example is Shrutakirti Prabhu, who was, of course, you know, a close servant of Srila Prabhupada. He was mentioning that at one point, I think maybe it was in Juhu, maybe it was somewhere else, so if someone knows, they could correct me. But I think it was Kaushalya and something with a P. Who was her friend in Juhu? Something with a P. Anyway, but names. They took on some role in some program, you know, kind of managing or arranging, organizing things, and then and at least in that instance, things fell apart, and Srila Prabhupada was very upset, and he was very upset with them that they mismanaged the program. They didn't, you know. And then afterward, Shrutakirti Prabhu recalls that afterward, Srila Prabhupada, he kind of changed his tone and said, "Of course, you know, you're ladies. I don't expect you to be, you know, managing all of these things like this, something like that." And at least that seems to be a theme that, and unless I'm just biased in my reading, or maybe the things I'm reading are biased, but it just seems that that's something that you find, which is a bit different from, I think is a bit different from the emphasis that because you're not the body, therefore positions, roles, ambitions in life, there shouldn't be much of a difference. And I find that's also shown in this chapter, where the kind of transition, we can say, that's undergone by Ila to Sudyumna. And is a name given to Sudyumna as a woman, or no? Is there no. So it seems that it's Srila Prabhupada is emphasizing in this purport 33, that Of course, vasamsi jirnani yatha vihaya, and you're not the body, and therefore the body is distinct from the soul. The soul is distinct from the body. But you see, not only in the narration, in like the verses of this chapter, but even Srila Prabhupada's comments within this chapter, that Sudyumna's transition was like a full one. He didn't just change his identity; he changed his entire body, and along with that came, he changed his strengths and weaknesses. And that's something that Srila Prabhupada comments on also in this chapter, that when Ila became Sudyumna, he then became competent to act as this king. When Sudyumna changed to a woman, he lost the strengths and weaknesses of a man, and he developed the strengths and weaknesses of a woman. And then therefore, that Srila Prabhupada says that therefore, when he was in his, and Srila Prabhupada does keep saying his, but his or her female form, then Srila Prabhupada says that he wasn't good at managing things. It didn't work well with him. And also though, when in his female form, he or as a woman became attracted to this man Buddha, but in his male form he didn't become attracted to men. So in his male form he still regained the same like a heterosexual orientation. In his female form, heterosexual orientation. In his female form, it wasn't just like an external appearance, internal also, although all the internal and external sexual organs are changed. He gets pregnant as a woman and as a child. But I feel like there's something very significant there, that even though there's this emphasis in Purport 33 that you're not the body, and therefore we should always remember that, still in this chapter and in Srila Prabhupada's purports, there seems to be an appreciation that within different bodies there are strengths and weaknesses, and we become good or better or less well fit with certain services due to those things.
Yeah, you're right. The only thing is that there are exceptions. I mean, Sandamini has been there for a long time, and she was married there at first, but her husband kind of went off, but she stuck it out and is still, managing that place quite effectively. So there are exceptions, and this Vrindavaneshwari in Potomac, did I mention? Yeah, her father was a general, so she has some of that ability to manage. So, but it's rare and it's an exceptional, and it's not something that we should really search out. It just happens, that someone gets that position and they're able to handle it. And actually, Vishaka, I noticed she's the president, but she's not in managerial so much. It's all like giving classes and philosophy, because she's very smart, but she doesn't, if I understand correctly, organize everything and give orders and like that. That's someone else who does that.
I think everyone can accept, can appreciate the exceptions. I also think there's a strong point to be made that when we glorify exceptions, sometimes we then make those exceptions the goal for men and women. And so yeah, especially young men and women, they're very susceptible to whatever examples we really appreciate in their presence. And so if we uniquely glorify Sandamini as a Vaishnavi, and specifically glorify her for not just her devotion, not just her, not just her devotion to Krishna, but because she wasn't just a Vaishnava, she was a Vaishnavi leader, a Vaishnavi temple president. If we uniquely glorify that, and now I'm not saying this is necessarily the case in ISKCON, but if it was the case that we especially like to point out the exceptions to kind of what we could call Sri Dharma, and so we especially glorify Sandamini and Vishaka, then that might set a kind of a standard for women in ISKCON, women who hear this, that I would be an exceptional Vaishnavi if I could be like that. I would be a better Vaishnavi if I could be like that. And you find that in America, really, and just in the whole modern world, where as public appreciation for mothers has decreased or been seen as sort of like the default position, the unimpressive, just automatic position, and not really the glorified position of women. And the exceptions like Hillary Clinton and other well-known, Oprah Winfrey, and well-known leaders, really people who are really career-focused and successful in their careers, as those examples become especially glorified, and as the examples of mothers, like this, like full-on mothers, like that's is reduced, then that affects generations and generations and what they see as successful, what they see as just settling, what they see as just mediocre, what they feel inspired to do, what they feel embarrassed by. And so I feel like I think there's a strong argument to be made that we should also be careful not to, perhaps in fear of or in sympathy, or not in sympathy, with awareness and sensitivity to the feminist movement, the modern feminist movement, to want to show that we've also got female leaders. We're also into female leadership. Check it out. That we also could be doing some harm, if maybe if only subtly. But I think there's a strong point to say that it is significant the way we speak about these things.
Okay.
That's just one opinion.
So we're
I don't
going to
want to take
spend,
the vote.
next time I'll glorify Ananga Priya and Praneshwari.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, glorify them all. But, and I actually, that's a great point. I mean, it'd be great to glorify Ananga Priya and Praneshwari. But,
Because Praneshwari is a bit of a, boss too. I mean, she runs things.
Well, see, there's the point that Praneshwari, I'd love to glorify her because she's a boss too, But it seems like often when we glorify women, we like to glorify them for the way that they are exceptional, and the way that they are not exceptional in female nature, but exceptional in the way that they are better than men at certain things, like better at leadership than certain men. And I think that, I guess, again, this is just one perspective.
All right, I'll be careful from now.
Oh no, and you can keep the same. I'm just presenting this for those who may be interested. Not that I'm here to censor you, though. But I think it's just a different perspective to throw out there for those who are thinking about it.
Okay. I think that's a good place to end the class. All glory to Srila Prabhupada.
Great leader.
And a great mother, Srila Prabhupada.
Okay. I see why Governor didn't want to give this class.
Well, I have some other questions about it.
Okay.